Joining us today as we talk about powering your electric vehicle marketing strategy. And today's webinar is presented by the Trade Desk, a global DSP enabling the world's leading advertisers to leverage data to reach their target audiences programmatically across media channels. And at the Trade Desk, we're so lucky to work with some of the most innovative and strategic automotive advertisers and OEMs. And I'm just thrilled to have two very distinguished guests from the industry joining me today on this discussion around electric vehicles. So before we get into the introductions and topic, I do want to remind everyone that towards the end of our discussion, time permitting, we will answer questions and we'd love to hear from you. So at the very bottom of this Zoom window, there is a Q&A box and you can submit your questions. And again, time permitting at the end of our discussion, we'll get to as many of those questions as possible. So let's begin. I'll start with a quick introduction on myself. My name is Matt Mendez. I'm the Director of Client Partnerships, Client Development, at the Trade Desk, where I partner very closely with our business development client services teams, working with some of our largest and most strategic automotive advertisers. And I am thrilled to now welcome two of our great partners to talk today about their work in electric vehicles. We have Kate Fabian, Director of Marketing Communications from Hyundai, and Kimberley Gardiner, Senior Vice President of Marketing for Volkswagen. And hello, both of you. Kate, if you wouldn't mind telling everyone a little bit of your background.
Sure. Hey, Matt. Hey, everybody. Great to be here with you all. As Matt said, I'm Kate Fabian. I work at Hyundai, Director of Marketing Communications. You can tell from my accent that I've come far and wide. I'm from Australia, but I've been here in the US for the better part of 6.5 years. I came across to head up the Genesis brand here in the US and have been working back on the Hyundai side for the last year and a half. Prior to that, spent many years in advertising and working in the auto industry over in Australia. So it's great to be here with you all. It's a really exciting topic. EVs are near and dear to my heart. So looking forward to really getting into it with you all.
Thanks so much, Kate. And Kimberley Gardiner, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Volkswagen.
Hey, Matt. Great to be with you. A little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for a very long time, a couple of decades, actually. Plus, actually came into the industry to work on the first generation Prius. So talking about EVs is also, like Kate, near and dear to my heart. And yeah, I've been with a lot of different brands, Toyota, Lexus, Kia, Mitsubishi, and now Volkswagen. And yeah, thrilled about the change and the excitement that is happening in our industry, and specific to EVs. I think it's going to be a great conversation.
Great. And so before we get into the details in the opportunities and challenges as marketers with the electric vehicle landscape, thought it might be good to level set on your respective brands and talking through a quick overview of your current electric vehicle and alternative fuel vehicle lineup. So Kate, if we can start with you.
Sure. Great. Thank you. So Hyundai, we have, we say the widest range of electrified vehicles here in the US. We have 12 right now, and it ranges from our hybrid to our hybrid plug-ins, to our electric, to our fuel cells. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar. We've got our Kona electric. I actually have one of those in my garage at the moment. And I'm telling you, I'm never going back. It's like plugging your phone in. I put a charger in my garage over the holidays, and I literally drive in, plug it in, and off I go in the morning. So I don't know about you guys. I wasn't sure about the research, but they say 82% never go back. I'm telling you, I'm never going back. So I know there's a lot of anxiety out there in the market, but once people dip their toe in, it's really a very different ownership experience. And Hyundai is very committed to that. I mean, that's the future of the industry in our mind. Globally, we're committing to 12 new BEV models and eventually selling just over 500,000 EVs by 2025. And by 2040, our entire lineup will be electrified. So it's a big commitment for us. You've all seen we've just launched the Ionic 5. Lots of excitement coming from a marketing standpoint around that vehicle, but it's definitely the future for us as a brand and very important for the auto industry.
And Kimberly, how about over at VW?
Yeah, so Volkswagen globally, very similar to what Kate was mentioning with the Hyundai brand. We're very, very committed in terms of our EV lineup. We have one vehicle here right now, the ID4 that we launched last year, to, I think, great success. I think it's really paved the way for what we're talking about in terms of, bringing EV to the masses and democratizing what the EV experience can look like. And so, again, it's been, I think, a really great success story about how you can reach a whole variety of different audiences and really start to convert people to EV that we've really never seen before. I think, Kate and I can agree for sure that a couple of years ago, even, we wouldn't have predicted that things would take off like this from a consumer standpoint. I think brands like ours, like Volkswagen and Hyundai, have been preparing for these moments and really bringing the right product to the marketplace. But we've seen such an acceleration in terms of adoption from all over and across, the board, from all types of different audiences. So that's what we're really excited about at Volkswagen, to be a global big player and bring more cars, including the ID Buzz, which is coming in a couple of years into our market.
So let's talk a little bit more about those audiences and your marketing efforts to support your very impressive electric vehicle brands. With all the incredible growth that we are seeing in vehicle electrification, it represents a big brand halo moment for both of your brands. But if you look at the current landscape and from a short-term opportunity standpoint, it's still a niche segment, right? I haven't seen myself the final numbers for 2021, but I don't believe market share surpassed 4% yet. So as marketers, how do you balance that? How do you balance the brand halo opportunity with those very necessary data-driven strategies to find those current intenders? And we can start with you, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question, Mark, and it's something that I'm sure Kimberley, like I, debate every day. But I think the really important thing to understand for us at Hyundai anyway is that the EV and our new Ionic line is ultimately the ultimate proof point of the brand. It's how we move forward. It's very much a halo for our brand. It speaks very much to our brand proof points of innovation, of protection, even of assurance and the ownership experience, which is so important to people as they come into new brands. And, the other thing that we're noticing is, even if we're in market with our EVs, and we noticed it very much with Santa Fe and Tucson when we launched our PHEVs at the end of the year, it has a domino effect to our ICE vehicles. And we're seeing it through the data. 58% of those looking for ICE Santa Fe and Tucson were still coming into market during the time when we're pushing our PHEV models. So for me as marketers, we've got to think about this differently. And it's more about providing choice to our customers and allowing them to choose the powertrain that best suits them. And we're doing that through all of our different media, through our website. If you go onto our website today and you search for Tucson, you are then given the choice between ICE, hybrid, PHEV, and you as a customer can then decide which one best suits you. So it's thinking differently. It's also realizing that this customer is a very different buyer. They're younger, they're very tech savvy, they're very in touch with digital media, with social, with AR experiences, and looking at those new opportunities and partnering with big brands and mediums that allow you to really speak to them at their level. Because if you continue to look at just traditional and linear media, you're just not going to reach them. And that's what excites me the most. I'm always looking for innovative ways to bring our products to market. And I think this EV market and this EV buyer is one that really allows you to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree in terms of the landscape. And, we are looking at a very different type of buyer. Their expectations are much higher. The way they want to engage with media is much different. And I think, the more we can lean into all types of channels and video, I think the better in terms of reaching that customer really where they want to be. And I think before COVID, the world looked differently in terms of shopping for automotive. Now it's, radically changed. So I think what we've looked at is a couple of things. One is, all audiences are not equal. We talk about EV being established, prime, and then open. And so we're looking by definition for marketing channels that can help us to reach out to those audiences in some different ways, whether they're already established and they already own an EV and they're looking for a second one, whether they're primed and they're tuned in and they're excited about it and they want to know more information and when they can get one, or whether they're open and they're looking maybe 6 or 12 months down the road or even further down the road. We just want to make sure they're comfortable and they're confident about the decision, exactly what Kate was saying. So for us, I think it's really about how do we reach those new audiences in some different ways. and get them excited about what could be here in a dynamic environment with auto right now, where we know supply is not the easiest conversation to have. And I think it's proving to be challenging for us continuing, throughout the year. So people may be waiting a while to get that EV, and we need to keep them excited and engaged. And that's going to be reaching them, in a variety of different places and spaces. But much like Kate, we're seeing about 2/3 of those that are looking at ID4 as a new owner, I should say, they're new to Volkswagen. So we're conquesting. And we're also seeing about 90% coming from ICE vehicles, so that are brand new to EV. And I think that's really exciting. We're creating that new market.
One of the things I'm curious about as you talk about your strategies and the important audiences that you need to reach is the adoption of your dealers in terms of their marketing efforts. One of the things we know about the current adoption around electric vehicles in the United States is it's very regionalized. The last study I saw is just shy of 60% of all current electric vehicle sales happen in 5 states. California is about, I think, 38, 39. Don't quote me on that number. So are you seeing an adoption with the dealers at a tier 2 or tier 3 level to start supporting some of the electric vehicles across the lineup? Or is that primarily still just a tier 1 push at this time, Kate?
No, I mean, it's a very interesting question, Matt. And I think the industry's moved significant amounts in the last 6 months. I'm certainly seeing it with our dealers. In fact, we just had a pretty big call with, our key dealer group, and they themselves were expressing surprise. People were actually coming in now and asking for PHEVs. And that was a surprise to them. But for me, PHEV is almost the ultimate way to get into an electrified vehicle, because it takes away that range anxiety. It gives you the benefit of electric. And it's just kind of that baby step in, as Kimberley mentions. Some people have got 2 feet in already. Some are like really on the fence. And then those people that are kind of swaying either way. And particularly here in California with the rising gas prices, there is a scarcity when it comes to vehicles. And our dealers, honestly, they can't get enough of them. They really can't. And from a marketing standpoint, sure, at tier 1, we're supporting it, but also at tier 2, there's quite a huge demand from our dealer groups to look at really pushing our electrified range. So really positive. Our dealers understand that that's the future, and that's where we need to go as a brand. And as I said, we're putting electrified messaging out in the marketplace. And we're seeing that it's growing demand for our ICE vehicles as well. So it really is acting as a halo.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing, exactly what you said, is that it's driving traffic across really our whole SUV lineup. And dealers are recognizing that. And I think they're seeing this as a really great moment in time to really help shape the future. They're leaning a lot more into digital. They're leaning a lot more into other ways to reach customers. Like connected TV, like other platforms. So the timing, I think, is really good for dealer groups as well as individual dealers to really embrace this and see it's a bigger opportunity. And we've seen dealers really excited about it.
Fantastic. Kate, something I wanted to drill in, you talked about it briefly just a moment ago, but with the release of the Ionic 5, will also mark the launch of a dedicated electric vehicle sub-brand for Hyundai, also called Ionic. And you touched on some of the key benefits, but if you could spend a little bit more time talking about some of the benefits Hyundai sees in establishing a dedicated sub-brand specific for electric vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, Matt. I mean, I think the most important thing to understand is the difference of the maturity of the brand here and as it is in Korea. So as we know in Korea, Hyundai is a very mature brand. Here, we're very still much a challenger brand. And that's exciting, but we need to continue to keep our foot on the gas. And we need to ensure that Ionic, whilst it is a sub-brand, it's still very much a halo for the Hyundai brand. So if we go back to think about what's our core strategy, and it's all around progress for humanity. And as I said before, Ionic for us is the ultimate proof point of that. It gives you the protection, it gives you the technology with EVs, and it also gives you a very different but very comprehensive owner experience. So whilst it's seen much more of a sub-brand in Korea, it will always and very intentionally here in the US be linked back to Hyundai as the mother brand. And Ionic, Hyundai was a very different brand when we first came here in the US. It was seen as a very value-driven brand. We've come a long way. There's quality, there's tech, it's a completely different brand today. And that younger audience that Ionic attracts brings in a very new and fresh audience to the brand. And we need that. And that is the future of our brand, and it's the future of our dealer network. So it's very important, but we intentionally will always link it back to the Hyundai brand.
Makes sense. And Kimberley, we talked a little bit about the ID4, and it's such a strong new entrant into the electric vehicle landscape. And it's exciting to see things like increased range already coming to the vehicle. And you had talked about before how it's attracting a new buyer. And I would think inherently that your initial new vehicles into EVs might be more of a stronger retention brand. Doesn't seem to be the case, or is it a little bit of both? Are you seeing a kind of a wave of new buyers, or is it really supporting both important parts of bringing new buyers to the brand, but also for those existing owners that are looking for alternative fuel vehicles, something for them to lean into as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a dynamic kind of a situation, meaning that in the beginning, in the first like 6 months or so, we saw quite a few conquests coming in, new people coming in, because I think, there's just a lot of excitement about EVs, and we're seeing people that maybe had a Tesla or something else in the past, and they want to change and they want something different. We've seen on some forums, new ID4 owners commenting that they wouldn't have maybe considered something other than a Tesla before. Now they're really excited about what's yet to come and more things down the pipeline. But definitely, I mentioned earlier, it's about 66% or so of our current ID4 owners are coming from outside of Volkswagen. So it's definitely brought in a brand new, buyer to us. And the fact that so many are coming from those ICE engines, I think that's exciting as well. We are seeing them, as Kate said, with what she's seeing with her buyers, younger. They're definitely, they tend to skew a little bit more bi-coastal for sure, but we are seeing a lot more folks in the heartland and across really America considering an ID4 and looking forward to ID4. So I think from that perspective, it's been a nice way for us to diversify our buyer and attract some new folks to our brand and use it as a halo, exactly what Kate said. And the data shows us that.
You both shared a lot already about the excitement it's generating across new consumers to your brands. And a lot of what you're talking about is echoed in some industry research. A recent Pew Research Center survey said about 7% of US adults said they currently have either an electric or hybrid vehicle. It kind of matches, if you combine those segments, annual market share. But the encouraging thing that's been echoed with the traction you're seeing across consumers is that 39% said they were very or somewhat likely to seriously consider buying an electric vehicle the next time they are in market. So you talked about the audiences that are coming to your brand and how you're reaching out to them. So specific around your audience strategies, how are you leveraging data to find those audiences that are looking to consider electric vehicles, many of which for the very first time, of course? What are some of those strategies, some of those data-driven insights that you're leaning into with your electric vehicle strategies? Kate, we can start with you again.
Yeah, and data, I mean, for me, data is so important. And I think that has really changed the landscape for marketing, definitely in the last 10 years for me anyway. I mean, I don't know about you, Kimberley, but a lot of my decisions, 10 years ago were, there was gut there, right? And there still is to a certain point, but we delve into data and we look at data and there's a lot of robustness around it. It allows us to optimize what we're doing. It allows us to pivot really quickly. And with the tools that we can get our hands on, we can do this on a daily and weekly basis. Whereas previously you were waiting for kind of month-end reports and kind of pivoting there. For us, it's still very much a two-pronged approach. There's always going to be that need to generate awareness. Hyundai is, this is a very important segment and new area for us, and we want to continue to lead that conversation. So there's always that part of it. But when it comes to all our in-market programs and people who are a little bit further down the funnel, we use what we call a demand-based approach. And that's based on, targeting and messaging based on the way consumers are shopping, with their shopping habits, what they're looking for, what they're interested in. And rather than allocating budget specifically to alt fuel versus ICE, we kind of manipulate that based on demand and where consumers are going and how they're shopping, and using that to ensure that we're serving them messages that are more appropriate to what interests them, and ensuring that obviously we get greater greater click through and greater greater leads to our dealers. Because at the end of the day, particularly when it comes to lower funnel, we got to sell cars and we got to get foot traffic into our dealers and we got to generate leads for them. And, you know, I'm sure Kimberley would agree, if they're not getting the leads or they're not getting the foot traffic, well, then they're coming after us. So we got to use the data as best we can to generate those leads and ensure that those customers who are shopping in what I would say is a very cluttered in-market space now are getting messaging from brands that is relevant to them, that speaks to them, and that understands what they're looking for and assist them through their shopping process. So we use a lot of data to do that, and we're seeing tremendous results from it. We also use our own data. We have our website, we have all of our lead management tools. For Ionic alone, you know, we have deposits that have come in from customers. We have huge amounts of interest in the product, like Kimberley saw for ID4, and continuing to leverage and remind and communicate with that audience. I mean, they're the lowest hanging fruit of all. So ensuring that we're serving the messaging, that we're giving them message and that's not only relevant, that adds value, so that when they're ready to buy, that Hyundai is top of mind.
And Kimberley, in terms of electric vehicles and ID4, some of the leveraging some of the data strategies to find the right audience, what have you seen successful?
Yeah, I'm just echoing what Kate had said. I mean, I think we're looking at this from a multiple prong approach, but propensity, I would say openness to Volkswagen as a brand, openness to considering EV, and then propensity in terms of that spectrum I mentioned earlier. You know, are they established? Are they primed? Are they open? And we have a variety of data points, not just demographically, but also from a behavior and a mindset standpoint. Where are people in that spectrum and what are they looking for? We look at their shopping queues, like Kate was mentioning before. Some of that's going to come from our own data. A lot of that's going to come from where we're seeing with partners in terms of some of the flags along that purchase journey. And it becomes more clear as they're diving more into that shopping path that they are indeed more interested. And that's something that we obviously want to leverage. And I think that, again, goes back up to more of our media strategy and our way that we kind of pair those audiences with the way we buy. You know, when I started a little over a year ago, it was quite broad in the sense of we're looking at, you know, all audiences that could be looking at an EV over the next, you know, year or two. We've really narrowed that down. One, because, you know, we are going to have some awareness building activities, but a lot of this is really going to be how do we manage the great demand that's out there. We had thousands and thousands of reservations before we even launched the vehicle. So we don't want to, you know, waste any dollars in terms of the investments that we're making and that ROI. So we're reaching people that might not be interested anytime soon. So I think a lot of these channels now allow us for that flexibility to be able to create awareness where it makes sense and be much more targeted where it makes sense and really dial in and optimize, like Kate was saying, the dollars that we're investing.
That's great. Kimberley, I want to follow up with that briefly. And we're talking about the explosive growth, obviously, of electric vehicles. In our world, we've seen, obviously, explosive growth on the connected TV side. So as you look at the rollout of the ID4, a couple of questions. One is, where in the marketing funnel did connected TV assist with, or currently assisting with your ID4 initiatives? And with Volkswagen always being such a leader in the linear TV space as well, how do you think about that, again, that balancing act in the media mix of that better together, that required better together strategy you need to think about between linear and connected television?
Yeah, well, I think by definition, a more targeted strategy leads to more of a targeted video approach by definition. And that's only more the case, or more so the case with ID4. We had a really good idea of who we were trying to target and what they look like and what we want to attract to the brand. So we're still, obviously, linear is important to the portfolio. I think I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I think we saw a lot more opportunities to tap into connected TV, both from early on in the process, but also that in-market shopper, like we were just talking about. And to them, I think, you know, video is video, right? They're not differentiating between these different environments. It's if you have a message that's relevant for me, how are you reaching me where I'm at, in a way that feels like it's something that I'm interested in and that I will engage with. And, I think it's our jobs to figure that out. And how do we show up? What do we say? Where do we give more interesting experiences that are more digital video bespoke? I think that's really exciting for us. So the answer is we used it across really the whole journey at different points in time. And because we could pivot too as we were going through, I think that also made a big difference. You can't pivot that easily in linear in terms of seeing things ebb and flow with supply and demand. We could do that more with connected TV. Yep. We're still doing that right now.
Excellent. And Kate, again, as we talk about the rollout of the Ionic 5 and the sub-brand, of course, are there certain marketing channels that you're excited about in terms of that kind of walking from increasing awareness all the way through helping your dealers with those reservations and driving sales for those new electric vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, as we've talked a lot on this call, it's a different audience. It's a younger audience. They're very connected. And Kimberly's right. They think video is video. And it's where we connect with them in spaces that they're spending a lot of their time. But what I will say, particularly of launch of an Ionic being, not only a launch of a new model, but a halo for the brand. For me, the important thing is, synchronized coordination across all channels and recognizing the role of each channel. You've got to be careful not to put too many messages into one. You've got to let each one work the hardest that it can in the way that it's designed to do. And we've kind of coined this, we call it the full funnel attack. And we're ensuring that in all our messaging, it's not only synchronized, but it's doing what it needs to do. So let's take Ionic 5. We've got to get the reach out there. People have got to know what it's about. And we use some of our key partnerships like Sunday Night Football. You saw what we did with Marvel when we launched Tucson. I'm not sure if you caught, but a week ago, we did a big integration with Blackish, where Anthony Anderson was pitching for the Super Bowl and Ionic was his product. So it's integrating with partners and shows that people love and already follow and putting our brand as part of that. And for me, that's the best way to get to the hearts and minds of people as a brand, rather than just going out there solo by yourself and saying, here's Ionic, take interest. Yep. The other big place for me is social. Social is such an important medium these days. It's where everyone's spending, particularly after the last 2 years, we've been stuck in our houses. I think I saw a stat the other day when people are watching live sports, they have their phone in their hand. It's almost an extension of the way that they communicate these days. And it spans all races and all cultures, particularly the Hispanic culture, which is a hugely important culture here in the US. I mean, it really is an extension of them. And particularly as you look at millennials and start to get younger, it's the way they're communicating. I mean, who would have thought that TikTok would surpass Google in terms of being, the most popular site visited in 2021. So as an OEM and as a brand, if we're not part of that conversation, if we're not showing up, if we're not relevant, and we're not looking at those channels and talking to people in ways that they want to be talked to through those channels, then we're just not going to be relevant. So for me, there's such a huge opportunity with social and digital, particularly for Ionic, and watch this space, because we've got a lot of fun and exciting stuff just about to drop. I can't talk about it, but it's coming. So we're excited.
That's exciting. And as we're talking about channel mixed media strategies, more and more bleeding edge strategic marketers like yourself are really pushing the envelope and really trying to truly understand the ROI of your investment, particularly your digital investment. Here at the Trade Desk, we've made some strides to help bring more measurement tools into the platform for our automotive clients. Chief among them are partnerships with leaders such as Polk and Urban Science, where we can bring in offline vehicles sales data directly into our platform. So Kimberly, how are you looking to measure ROI of some of the CTV campaigns that you had mentioned, and some other best practices that you'd be willing to share with the audience around not necessarily just CTV, but as you look for your digital investment, what are some of the things you're really leaning in on from a true ROI standpoint?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think it's something, again, like the marketplace itself, we're constantly figuring out how to optimize, because what ROI might mean to us today is going to be a little different depending on car line, depending on timing, depending on inventory, as we go week over week and month over month throughout the year. So you know, I think targeted reach is really a big thing for us. So how do we make sure that we're getting the reach that we want to with the audiences that we're targeting and looking towards, but that we can put that targeted lens over it. Both are very important. So we need environments where we can reach new audiences, where we can be engaged with them where they're at, exactly what Kate was talking about. And we can have, I think, a targeted message that's going to be something, you know, we talked about full funnel before. We look at it as a customer journey. And so measuring, you know, things from an ROI perspective a bit differently up front from that pure broad standpoint to see, are we moving the needle with our brand? Are we gaining awareness? Are we gaining consideration? Are people paying more attention? Are they more engaged? I know that is a perception of Volkswagen adapting with this kind of new environment with these new younger audiences. Especially around EV leadership that we've started to really establish and lean into. And then as we go through and as people are shopping, how do we make sure that we're really capturing those people like Kate had talked about before? They're really going to convert, right? They're serious and they're interested and they're engaged. And we can show up in an area like connected TV, digital video, social media in a way that doesn't feel like it's as traditional in market, I think, as the industry sort of thinks about it as. It's either retail or it's brand. And I think we're trying to bring in TikTok and we're trying to bring in other social-based type of video content further across that journey so that we make hopefully engaging with the brand, like Kate said, just more fun.
Okay, and for Hyundai, on the ROI, you talked about the full frontal approach. What are some of the things that you're a little bit newer in terms of the way that you're really trying to gauge ROI of your investment?
Yeah, I mean, CTV specifically, Matt, is very much an awareness play for us right now. The great thing is you can get richer in terms of getting the data and getting better attribution through it. But I think once we clean up a little bit of the matching and the cookies, I know we're still working through all of that, it can be a lot more effective for us. But to Kimberley's really great point, you know, it's being more targeted in our approach, ensuring that we're serving messaging that's relevant and more bespoke to our audiences, and using targeting and messaging to use attribution modeling to give us the scale we need. For Hyundai, particularly in the electrified space, there's a lot of conquest going on. You know, it's bringing in a huge new audience for us, and the way we grow is through conquest. So we're using a lot of targeting tools and lookalike targeting with urban science to really start to gain that reach and bring in those new buyers. And we're seeing it every day. And for us, that's a really important ROI for us, because we need to grow our pie. We need to grow our share. We're a challenger brand. And the more new people, or the more people that we're able to conquest from some of our key competitors, that's what we're about right now.
Excellent, and thank you so much for that great discussion. As we look at about roughly 10 minutes left, as a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions for our great panelists, go ahead, and we have a few already. Go ahead and type those into the Q&A portal. So we'll start going to some of the questions that have come through the attendees. The first one, it really looks more around messaging in your communication around electric vehicles, and specifically around what used to be and might still be one of the key concerns around consumers, which is range anxiety. Now, I think the vehicles that you are introducing to the space kind of address that in and of themselves, with some very competitive range rankings. But from one, are you still seeing that among consumers? And if so, how are you addressing that, if at all, in your messaging? And we can start with you, Kimberley, on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And short answer, yes, it's still relevant. But I think really the question that we're getting asked more is, how does it fit into my lifestyle? You know, how does it fit into the way that I drive? I think that one of the things we've done that has been very successful so far is we really made an effort to diversify and look across the spectrum of different folks that are interested in EV. It doesn't just about, or not just about maybe people that, you know, Silicon Valley, tech bro kind of culture. We've looked at this as, how do we reach younger audiences, families? So getting the car in the hands of creators and influencers that are down to earth, real voices. They have real commutes. They need, you know, a real Costco run where they have to fit things in the back of the vehicle. And hearing them talk about their experience over a weekend, you know, I drove the car, I drove back and forth to work, I did this with my kids, et cetera, et cetera. And I can see myself in this vehicle. I think that is a real testament to the idea of what is it going to take to get me into an EV? They like the idea of it. A lot of people love the idea of it. It's really, can I see myself in this for a week's commute, for a weekend? Can I take a road trip? And that's what we try to do with our content strategy. Like I said, with creators and influencers, show the car in a whole variety of different ways, going up the coast of California, you know, looking at it from an urban, suburban standpoint, different types of people, trying it out, getting behind the wheel, driving it for real, charging the car, and giving their and sharing their experiences. And that seemed to really resonate well.
Go ahead, Kate. Did you?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. For me, it's how do we demystify, you know, this kind of myth that, oh, I'm not sure that's going to fit my lifestyle. And the best way to do that is using content creators and influencers to just show people everyday life inside an Ionic or an ID4, and you know how it fits their lifestyle and the benefits of it. But more importantly, it's also about telling people about what these new vehicles do. I mean, the Ionic 5, you know, has a range of over 300 miles. You can charge it from 10 to 80% in 18 minutes. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's quicker than charging your phone. It really is. And we've done some really key partnerships. We've partnered with Electrify America. So every person that buys an Ionic 5 gets 2 years of free charging. So if, unlike me, they can't put a charger downstairs in the garage, you know, there's the ability through Electrify America to charge it, you know, as part of your ownership experience. So it's demystifying, it's showing how it fits into your everyday life. And then it's communicating the features and benefits of what these products actually give you. So it's not a one size fits all, it's a combination.
Actually, this interesting question just came in, and we touched on some of the challenges throughout the discussion, but wrapping it up, interesting. Question is, what was the biggest challenge you encountered when beginning your EV marketing journey? So Kimberly, if we'll start with you on that one. If you had to pick out the one big challenge at the start of your strategies, what do you think it was?
I mean, I think we were very fortunate from a timing perspective to hit a marketplace where there's so much more engagement and interest in EV electrification just across the board. I would have said it would have been, you know, how do you really mainstream something that just a few years ago felt like it was more on the cutting edge? It felt like it was more for early adopters. And how do you move that now into the masses? But honestly, I think, you know, we as an industry really, I think, are in a great time where so much of that has been accelerated that it's still going to be a challenge. We still need to get a lot more people to feel exactly what Kate was saying, that this car can be for them, that, you know, it's okay to pass a gas station and actually you feel really good about it because you can say that's never going to be me again. And I'm with you, Kate. I own an ID4 myself, and I'm not planning on ever going back. I can't imagine doing that. So I think really the biggest challenge has been how do we create and plant the seed for future demand, knowing we have limited inventory, especially for this vehicle, and how do we nurture that demand over time? How do we keep people engaged and interested and waiting for that vehicle that could be a few months down the road, and we know it's worth waiting for, but I think that's an important thing that we still have a challenge with.
And Kate, one challenge that sticked out particularly for you?
Yeah, you know, for me, Matt, it's honestly, it's the infrastructure. And as Kimberly mentioned, the acceleration of the infrastructure, particularly for electrified vehicles, the acceleration rate over the past 2 years has been astronomical. Hydrogen's got a little bit further to go. But for me, that's the challenge for consumers. They want to be sure that when they need it, they can charge their vehicle. And also our dealerships, you know, we demand a pretty different experience. The consumers demand a much more elevated experience from our dealers, and we need to ensure that they have that infrastructure ready to go. So particularly for the Ionic 5 launch, our dealers have pretty rigorous requirements of them in terms of putting in fast charging, in terms of really building up their dealership to service this new group of customers. So getting that on board and rolling that out. I mean, you can imagine we've got over 800 dealerships here in the US, and anyone who wants to be an Ionic dealer has to adhere to these certain requirements. And rolling that out over the last couple of years has been a big challenge for the business. But it's something that we've been committed to as a brand, because as you all know, you can't just sell a car. You want to continue and resell that car to that same person, and they have to have the ownership experience that they expect and demand. And frankly, without that infrastructure within our dealerships, it's not going to happen. So for me, that was the biggest challenge for us as a group. And consumers are coming along quicker and quicker. It amazes me every day.
Crazy. And then the final question, a few minutes left, that came in, and we talked a lot about full funnel and the different channels that you're are investing in. But the question was, is there one media channel that you've leveraged more than any other in terms of your EV marketing strategies?
Yeah, I mean, for us, digital video for sure. Social, as Kate mentioned, has been a huge focus for us. And I think that's only going to continue in 2022, not just for electrified vehicles, but for really everything, because I think that's where consumers are at. So yeah, that's where we definitely doubled down a lot on digital video and social.
How about you, Kate?
Exactly the same.
Same?
I mean, think about it. You've been at home for 2 years, the rise in streaming, the rise in, being on your phone, everyone, it's digital video and social. That's the future.
Got it. Well, Kate, Kimberley, thank you both so much for your time today and for such a great discussion and really sharing all the great things that you're doing for your brands and in the electric vehicle space. So with that, everyone, thank you for attending today and hope to have another session for you in the near future. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Kimberley. This was fun.